Happy Wednesday, everybody. This is Rob Mazak here. I am a psychic medium, and I talk on many different topics and subjects, from the alternative to spiritual to science, and most of the time I just mash it all up. And I don't do anything scripted. When I do things scripted, it sounds like I'm like a robot or something, and I don't really enjoy listening to robots. I'm sure you don't. So most of this is unscripted, off the cuff, with a general idea in mind of what I'm going to talk about. And what I wanted to start with today was with a statement, basically, that it is amazing how spirit guides, those that guide you from the other side, if you will use your own advice and your own wisdom for others against you. And it's not a bad thing. And we do, as humans, do need reminders at times, because it's easy to have advice for other people, but forget that we need to follow our own advice many times. This is something that actually happened to me yesterday morning. As I had been talking about some things over the last few podcasts, or at least I've had it in several podcasts recently, about the double slit experiment that has kind of spawned the quantum science, quantum physics, all that type of mentality, resulting in many different ways of looking at the invisible, if you will. I'm not saying it's offered as proof, but there's really some very, very interesting things that have come out of it. And so the double slit experiment, I'm simplifying it because I'm not a science guy. I do kind of understand what they're talking about when I read it. Sometimes it's hard to explain it. But just to kind of give you a little background on it. So I think it started many years ago when they could, at one point, begin to work with electrons, at that level. The idea is that you set up like a wall or a barrier of some sort with two vertical slits that are parallel to each other as openings. And then there will be a wall, or a wall is placed behind it to see how the patterns of the electrons form when they fire them at these two slits. I have no idea why they decided to do this experiment. I'm sure I've read it, but I don't remember it right now. But it has turned out to, or it has brought forth many different ideas about what reality actually is, or what it isn't, for sure. And what it is really a lot of it's based on perception. And if you're not familiar with perception, we'll talk about that first. So perception is basically what drives our reality. Our mind, our perception is really what, another word would be truth. What we consider our truth, which is wound up in life experiences, basically what we've been taught by our schools, our parents, our teachers, just on and on, right? The way the military works, bad things, good things that have happened to you, all wound up into what formulates to be our perception or our truth. Whether it's true or not, it's our truth. And so perception, or the way we see things, or the way we perceive things, no pun intended, is what really brings about our reality. And you can experiment with it. It actually works. Find yourself trying to purchase a red Corvette, or even if you're not going to purchase it, go sit in it, go test drive it, go research it, put it on your mind all throughout the day, and you will find that many of the red Corvettes in your city, in your area where you live, on your way to work, on your way back, will begin to appear in your reality, in your day. And it seems like it's an amazing thing, but it really isn't all that amazing, because our perception is dialed into certain frequencies, if you will. And our mind wants to give us plenty of things in our reality and pick out the things that are happening in our day to support our truth, which I guess it makes sense for survival. But when we dial into a different frequency, such as the Red Corvette, all of a sudden our dial, our frequency has changed a little bit, and all of a sudden all the Red Corvettes that are in the city are now visible to you. You pay attention and you see them. They're just all of a sudden there. And you wonder, man, where did these things come from? But the funny thing is they've always been there. You were just dialed into a different radio station. You can't listen to two radio stations at the same time on the same radio. It just really doesn't work. Well, I mean, our technology today, you probably could, but you get my point. One frequency at a time. And if you want to listen to a different type of music, different radio station, different flavor, guess what? You got to change the frequency. And then you can have a different reality, at least for music, right? With the double slit experiment, what they found was really, really interesting, very profound, actually. So what they did was they fired electrons at this barrier, this wall with the two slits in it, to see how the electrons would behave. And what they were expecting was a similar pattern on the back wall that is shaped similar to the double slits, perhaps bigger because of the, the cone of distance and all those kind of things. What they actually found was when they weren't paying attention to it, when they weren't looking at it, and they just turned it on, fired it, left the room per se, and came back. Yes, the patterns on the back wall were in fact very much shaped like the double slits in the initial wall. But when they observed it while it was being fired, something very unusual happened. Those electrons behaved completely different. They went through the slits and they combined into potential and waves. They were not any particular electron. They were all of them all at the same time. And the back wall was completely covered and splashed with electron marks. It just kind of blew everybody away. And so they decided to, keep doing experiments. What they did next is they decided, well, maybe it is the influence of the scientist. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but they did. So they put a camera there. So maybe they could see what was really going on. Lo and behold, it didn't matter who or what was looking or observing this particular experiment. It would cause the wave-like function as it passed through the wall and create just possibilities, nothing specific. But when it was perceived, so perception changes everything, is what I'm getting at. They decided to pull the researcher or scientist out again without observing it, and guess what? Same old regular patterns look like the slits in the front wall or on the back wall. So perception has every single thing to do with potential and reality. So it makes you wonder how this universe began. If this universe began because somebody observed some potential or something, who would that have been? I don't know, right? It could be God. It could be all kinds of things. I'm just talking as if those things are true. I'm not proving. I'm not saying this is truth. I'm just saying experiments are different in a lot of ways than numbers. We've talked about that last night. Now that the universe is in place, I think what holds this reality together is our belief in the way this reality is and how it functions and all the laws of nature, laws of physics. We've, basically all come to agree on very similar things. And I think the billions of people that we have in this reality are holding this universe as it is in place. And if that's the case, I'm not saying it's truth, but if that's the case, imagine if a large number of us, or all of us, decided we wanted something different. Do you think, or do you ever wonder if we could change our reality by changing our mind? Well, there's a lot of people that say we can. Joe Dispenza, king of meditation, he has very hard scientific proof that it's possible, and it happens all the time. I talked about this a lot in the last couple of podcasts, like I said, and I talked about the fact that if we don't change our perception, our life never changes. In other words, if we don't change something, everything stays the same. And that we can really take nothing, which we all really are at a very molecular level. We are nothing, but we are something. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. But if we can take nothing and change it into something simply by perception and purposely changing it, our life could be way different, correct? It sounds simple, right? It really does sound simple. I don't think it's as simple as it seems. I mean, yes, I got plenty of examples of simply using visualization and changing my perception and using affirmations and all those kind of things to bring things into my life, very specific things. And it does take work. You can't do it over, one time or overnight, and you got to put some work into it because your subconscious mind that's been programmed for so long takes a while to unprogram or reprogram. Anyway, I talked about that, and it sounded glorious, and I'm like, wow, this is great. Great stuff. But then I started looking at my own life, and I'm like, I've kind of fallen into some patterns that I don't necessarily like. I do work out. I'm an exercise addict, but for some reason I've been gaining weight. Probably some camp life that I've been doing for quite a while out here with the military. But that's still no excuse. And I really started looking at some of the patterns in my life, and I thought, I really need to change my perceptions because it's going to get away from me. I'm not used to having a different shape, if you will. 63 years old, and all of a sudden it's just not the same. I could use the excuse that it's old age, but nah, not going to do that. Not going to accept that. I was pondering on it a lot, tried to meditate on it, I just couldn't connect for some reason. I'm really good at meditation, but it just wasn't. I couldn't quite bring that into clarity. So I got up this morning actually, and went and used the little boy's room, sat down in there, and I flipped on the light outside, and then I normally bring my phone or something to catch up on things that happened overnight for work. There's a lot going on out here on the border. I didn't bring it in this time, and I was staring at the wall in front of me, and there in front of me were two basically slits of light, just like I'm describing in this experiment. And they were formed by the lights that were on the back side of the door of the bathroom. And it was just two slits. And I couldn't figure out why there was two, but there was two. And when I really began to think about it and somewhat meditated on it while I was sitting there, I heard the message that, Robert, that's my name, that you are in a pattern of stillness, pattern of stalemate. You are doing the same thing over and over again, and you are expecting a different result. And it's not going to work that way. And it was like a, forgive the pun, or the statement, a come to Jesus meeting for me. I had to really contemplate on that. And so I began to really look at how I can change my perceptions, because I was seeing myself as somebody continuously that was getting a little weight on them that I'm not used to. It's not a lot, but it's there. And I guess I was simply accepting that. I was watching it happen, and I was not, I don't know if it was accepting is the right word, but I was allowing it. There we go. I was allowing it to happen. And I also realized that I needed to change my routine because I know better. I'm a fitness trainer as well. One of the golden rules is you got to mix it up. You got to change it. You got to shock your body, because guess what? If you keep going in and doing 3 sets of 12, of whatever, or some boring routine, you're never going to grow or change. It's just going to be, you're going to look the same. You're just going to use up energy, perhaps, not necessarily fat. You're going to lose, you're really not going to build muscle. It's just a bad paradigm. And so I realized that I also needed to get back to what I had done at the last camp, get my vision board back up there and put pictures up there of what I expected to look like. What kind of things and goals I would expect to achieve in the department of my health and the way I look. And so I did that. I began to do that. But then last night, or when I took a nap, rather, I was just getting this really large calling, barely big calling to stop, meditate, be still. So, I found some time at lunchtime, came back to my room on the camp we're staying at. It was like instantaneous. I'm pretty good at meditation, but sometimes it takes 30 seconds, a minute or so to get dialed in. But no, as soon as I closed my eyes and was still, boom, they brought me in. They basically showed me or put me standing in front of a very dark wall that went all the way to what appeared to be a ceiling and two large vertical slits in them. And what they told me was, to start with anyway, was that, Robert, you can't imagine splitting yourself up and walking through both of those slits in a physical state and expect to get to the other side where all the possibilities are, where the wave functions are, where the potentiality is, where you can manifest better. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to do it in your own physical strength. And I'm like, well, that's very true. And I said, so then this is supposed to happen in my consciousness, correct? And the answer was affirmative. Sounds like I'm talking to myself, right? But this is kind of how meditation works for me with the spiritual realm, if you will, the other side. And sometimes I can tell who I'm speaking with. Sometimes I can't. But it doesn't matter. It's all wholehearted and good for me. Some people have different experiences, but not me. And they said, so what you have to do is you have to kind of go in through these slits using your consciousness, but not a singular consciousness. You needed to divide your spirit. And I was thinking about that, and I know that you can separate your spiritual or energetic body from your physical body, but I guess I didn't have a lot of experience with separating my energy or spiritual body into two. And I really wasn't clear how I was going to do that. And all of a sudden, the floor that I was standing on began to vibrate like somebody put a whole bunch of very large subwoofers under the floor. And it's almost like that, if you're old enough to remember, the old football game where you put the little plastic football players on there and you turn it on, it vibrates and they move around. That's what it felt like. And it just got more and more and more intense. The more it ramped up, I found myself, if you will, what I would classify as myself, my being, my entity, my spirit body, whatever. It literally began to split into two. It's hard to explain how I was seeing that or visualizing that, but I could tell it was happening. And at one point, when the vibration got extremely high, or not high because it's a rumbling, but it got very strong, I found myself collapsing through the slits and meeting myself back on the other side. And then all the vibration stopped. It was total quiet, not a sound. And it was like I was in a very dark hallway. There was enough light per se to see that I was in like a hallway. I could see the slits where I came in that wall, and I could see the back wall. And they were like very dark, like I want to say like a dark granite or some kind of crystal that's dark. And I was told that this was the Hall of Possibilities. And I'm like, wow. I was imagining, all possibilities, wave functions, and just this extreme amount of potential to be like this dazzling glory and, flowers. And no, they said that a lot of people mistake this place for that, and it's not what it's about. It's about being in an absolute space where every potential, every possibility is simply there waiting for you to manifest or direct or give directions to, give your perception to. And they said, this is the time that you can ask for what you want. What is it that you really want, Robert? Because you're all over the place, chasing too many rabbits. Let's get a little more specific. I'm like, well, good point. Touche. I do chase a lot of rabbits. Like to be good at a lot of things. So I thought about that. And so, of course, I asked for all the wonderful health aspects that I wanted to have. Having your youth back, hair growing in the right places, skin tightened a little bit better, all those fun things that are not great as you get older. Better testosterone and metabolism and on and on. And then I stopped for a second. I thought Samuel, I think it was Samuel in the Bible, that had an opportunity to extend his life. I think it's the way the story goes. God was testing him to see what he would ask for. And this was what I was being reminded of. And so I switched around, turned around on that particular ask, what I was actually seeking. And I thought about that. I said, if I go back to my youth, I said, I don't want to repeat my life as a youth. I just want to be able to have that youthful state so that I can stay longer and do more good for this reality, this planet, this place. I know that's one of the missions I've been given to do, and that's a different story. But I also said, what I really want is I want to keep the wisdom I have. Never forget this life, this consciousness, these experiences. And not only do I want to keep the wisdom that I have and never forget it, never lose it, always keep it available whenever I want it. I want to increase that wisdom. I want to increase my knowledge. I want to increase my gifts. I want to be more and more helpful and a better human being to help humanity where I need to help them. So that two things is what I was really seeking. Think about it. I wanted the health and the youth and the strength, the vitality, along with the wisdom and the knowledge and the memory that never fades but only grows stronger and better and more useful, so that I can stay and play, if you will, and help more people get through these times when, they're all hard. I mean, you don't have to be a psychic to see that the world is changing at a very high rate and that people need help awakening and help understand what's going on as the veil, so to speak, thins and people are starting to experience things. I don't remember exactly. I kind of dozed in and out at that point, if you will, because sometimes meditation can kind of take you really close to that theta state, that self-hypnosis, and that one right before you go to sleep. And sometimes you bump into sleep. So I was kind of bumping in and out. And I do know that at some point I found myself back on the other side. I don't remember how that happened, to be honest. They reminded me that even though scientific experiments are showing what I talked about to begin with, said it's not exactly that way, because not everything can be discovered with science. Yes, they said we allow experiments and scientists to discover enough to understand what we're trying to communicate, but we're not going to give you everything. If you guys don't know, we can only experience not even 1% of all there is to experience in this reality. It's crazy. And just with that 1%, we'll just round it up, the world and the things in this reality are just amazing and beyond absolute belief. Can you imagine if you were thrown into 100%? You would not survive. You wouldn't know how to handle it. It's like trying to understand the mind of God. Even biblical texts, and I'm sure other religious texts talk about that. So this was a really, really cool experience. I did begin to create my vision board and all that. And so, interestingly enough, I came back tonight after my shift. And once again, found myself sitting in the bathroom. Guess I do that a lot. But anyway, there on the wall in front of me was no longer just 2 slits. There was at least 4. And there was no different lights on. All the lights that were on before were the same ones that were on when I saw the 2 slits. I am taking that to mean that my perception is beginning to fade. I'm not fade. My perception is beginning to affect my reality. And I'm getting very visual and valid experiences to show that what I'm doing is actually beginning to work. And so I would encourage you guys not only to look at quantum mechanics, quantum physics, things like that, not to do anything with it per se, but to understand what they're saying, because the language that they're speaking is very much the language of the spiritual world. Yes, they're using fancy scientific words, but we're all talking about the same thing. So if we begin to understand more about the invisible, we can definitely affect our reality, other people's realities, the world in general as a better place. We can do amazing things, and nothing is out of our reach. Absolutely nothing is out of our reach. We just have to sit down and decide what we really want. Decide what we want to be when we grow up. Quit chasing all the rabbits like me. I'll admit to it. I do chase a lot of rabbits. And really hunker down on what it is that we're supposed to do. I even got chastised last night. As I was going to sleep, I kind of popped in and out of that meditative state, which I like to do as I go to sleep. And I got this stern message, you just wasted half an hour, 45 minutes on TikTok. What the heck are you doing? You know what you could have done in 45 minutes? You're not there to waste your time. It's like I'm getting the drill sergeant effect. Golly, I've been through basic training twice. Here I am again, right? Anyway, point being that, if you really pay attention and you really begin to use mindfulness, you will notice things. You will get messages. You will learn exactly what it is that you're doing wrong, or ways you can do them better, if you will. Pay attention. Look at the signs. Don't just look at things and go, look at that, cool, 2 slits of light. Maybe they mean something. In my case, they absolutely meant something. And so once again, this kind of shows that if your perceptions on certain things, like the double slit experiment that has been in so many of my podcasts lately, I brought that, if you will, into my reality by turning my perception onto this simple experiment. It's not hard to do, people. Let me rephrase that. It's easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. Everything that you need to do to create your world, to create a different world, to create a different you, is inside of you. Every possibility is inside of you, and you are surrounded by just as many possibilities, if not more. Live your life on purpose. Don't wake up like an accident, and do something that's meaningful to you and this reality and this world and everybody that lives within it. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this, your comments. Reach out to me on my contact page on lifebymazak.com. lifebymazak.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and you will hear from me again. Stay strong and live your life.